Welcome back to the channel. This is George. Yeah, I almost forgot my name there for a second. This is Malaka MotorSports. Welcome back to the channel. We're going to be working on the RS3 today. Today we're doing fueling line upgrades. Now, with the S4, we kind of made our own lines as we went. We learned the struggles of building our own lines, what to do, what not to do, what line to use, what works with the 85, so on and so forth. This time I decided to pick up a kit to make it easy for the RS3 so I don't have to cut line, sit here and swedge my own corners or press them in or whatever the case may be. So Rs Motorsport carries a fueling line upgrade for the RS3. It's actually pretty simple. You can hit them up. Now, some may consider the price a little expensive, but you gotta understand what you're getting. So it upgrades the line to basically an 8 AM feed, and then it goes on, depending if you're having running an ethanol content sensor, it'll plummet down to about 6 AM there. But your line, your main line, and I'll take the stock line and compare it here shortly, is gonna get a huge upgrade in terms of volume of fuel. Now, with the stock motor 850, we had plenty of fuel. As you guys remember last year, I originally went with a built motor 850 car, and I started to be towards the upper sides of the limit of the fueling system. I have Rs Motorsports' built-in drop-in fueling upgrade, the brushless pump, and their injector upgrade, but with the 1000 kit, with the amount of volume of fuel and flow that I need, it's not enough. Also, keep in mind that the RS3 tank sucks in its design. The fuel pump setup is actually towards the front of the tank, and when you're launching, all that fuel goes towards the back. The baffling is horrible on the RS3 tank, so what a lot of guys try to do is they throw multiple pumps in there to try to siphon as much fuel as they can and then get it to feed, but they have to have at least half or maybe a quarter tank in the tank. What I might do later on is a surge tank upgrade, kind of like what we did on the S4 and what we're doing on Stops B5, where you can virtually have no fuel inside the fuel tank and still provide enough fuel to there with the surge tank to the motor so you won't have to have any issues. Plus, it helps you run a lighter car. It helps with baffling because the surge tank is really tiny and small and always fed with a feed and a return. Again, check out a lot of videos on YouTube in terms of surge tanks and how they work. There's a lot of diagrams. I'll throw one up here just for kind of simple idea of how it's supposed to work, but that's later on for another video. Today we're just upgrading lines. And this is going to allow me to up the boost a little bit. We were maxed out at about 44, 45. I'd like to be around 50 on a kill file, not daily driven, but if I want to turn it up and kind of give somebody the jam if I can, I'd like to have the volume of fuel so I don't run lean. Again, my current struggle is with the one brushless pump drop in on the tank. I have to have at least half a tank in there, especially for drag racing, so the fuel doesn't slosh all the way to the back and it doesn't trip a lean trip on the Cyvex ECU in terms of the safety protocols, and there's thousands of them in this ECU. So today we're going to be upgrading the stock lines. Stock lines are right here. You can see they're really, really tiny. A lot of them are quick release, which is kind of cool. And I'll be removing these along with reconnecting my ethanol content sensor that Cyvex uses to read what type of, or what the content is on my 85, where the fueling line goes, and then again installing the upgrades. But what we're going to do is remove the stock setup, and then we're going to do a comparison of what they look like compared to the IMS fueling line upgrade kit. That again looks pretty solid. I mean, the quality of the fittings look pretty nice, and it's kind of cool how it's all pre-built. If I could have found the pre-built setup for the B5, I would have bought it instead of spending as much time as we did learning and kind of breaking things as we usually do in this channel. So maybe that's a good thing. I don't know. But this time we opted to grab a kit. I believe Rs Motorsport sells it for about 500 bucks. A lot of you guys might say, oh, it's expensive, but you got to keep in mind, you're not just paying for the lines, you're paying for the heat wrap, you're paying for all the small fittings, you're paying for all the work that goes into it to make sure that this is more or less plug and play. So you just remove and then install. And it looks pretty simple. I'm pretty sure I'm going to find a way to kind of screw this up. But for the average person, for those of you guys that are normal, you guys should be pretty fine. I'm probably going to screw something up here. So anyway, without further ado, I'm going to start removing the stock lines. I'll let you know what I learn. I'm not sure if I'm going to be taking time-lapse on this. Maybe I should. I'll set up a GoPro real quick so you guys can see what I'm doing, maybe see the mistakes as they happen, and I'll update you guys here shortly. So update, I've already moved the fueling lines, one going to this little port feed right here. Stop, do we have that light, that little ball light? Yeah. Or get the one from the top of the tank if you want, top of the tank. And then we'll show them where we disconnected it from and where the lines are going to start. So the system is still returnless. Here's the feed here. It's going to come off. Disconnected this right here. Remove the ethanol content sensors over there on the table, which I'm going to show you in a second. And your feed is actually this tiny, really tiny metal line here that travels down the frame of the I was about to say aircraft, the frame of the car, and then goes underneath the tunnel, which I'm about to show you guys real quick. What's up, Stop? Say what's up, man. Say what's up. What's up? All right, so there's the line, new line, and I'll show you what we had to do to finagle it. So I dropped the plastics. Don't mind, the car's freaking filthy with 2 years back-to-back drag racing and off-roading and dumbassness. But here's the tunnel that the factory evap and the factory feed line, the really tiny one, travel down in. And it's only accessible from the back. And it's gonna have to travel back up through the front, going up into the engine bay. Now, the things that kind of interesting is, it's a little bit tight on the side of the fuel tank. So what we did was we loosened the 13 mil bolts on either side just slightly, just to drop it down about a half an inch to an inch. And that let this really big line and the factory one be able to drop down. Now this itself, and you'll see it in length here, and I'm sorry guys for the visual, I'm gonna do the best I can. We're gonna run this through this tunnel as carefully as we can, probably run safety wire or some kind of string, and pull it all the way through and go into the engine bay. And again, this is gonna upgrade your fuel line essentially from, let's see, where's that feed line again, Stuff? It's in the car. All right, there you go. So that's what you're updating your feed line to. So this is straight out of the pump, and look at the size. So you're essentially going from, what was that, 4, maybe even smaller than a 6, that's really tiny, to about an 8 AN line feed to get more volume and more fuel to your car. So if anyone tells you that stock lines are not a constriction, they are after a certain point, especially for you guys doing built motors or running high boost. You don't want to have the limitation of fuel to potentially lean out your motor. So again, this is the stuff, and there's a thin metal line that travels in the frame, like I said, in the engine bay, that limits your stuff versus what you're actually upgrading to in the 8 AN. So what we're gonna do is, again, we're gonna use a piece of string or safety wire, pull it up from the top, get that feed line coming up here on the side of the heat shield, and it's gonna essentially run here alongside of the engine, and then we're gonna connect the ethanol content sensor, and then in the front, and then we will be done with the fuel line upgrades for the RS3. Now, difficulty level so far, not bad. Just takes a little bit of time. Again, dropping the fuel tank very lightly, don't get afraid. It's just 2 13mm bolts. They drop down fairly simple. It just comes down about half an inch to an inch, and it gives you enough room. And when we got it up there, if you guys, I don't know if you saw when Stuff had the light. Let me see. Where's that other light? There we go. We essentially use safety wire to pull it up through the side. Now I just got to straighten out the line, but I ran safety wire down. Let's see what we got. Can this go? All right, there we go. I ran safety wire on the side of the tank, and we essentially just pull this upgraded line up, and I'm going to kind of straighten it out, make sure it's kind of in between where it's supposed to, so it's not rubbing anything while we're driving, and then it's going to hook up to the port at the top. It's a QD quick disconnect. So fairly simple. Doesn't look too involved, but it's a little tedious, so be really careful. And I have a full tank of fuel, and so far we haven't spilled much, so I haven't screwed anything up yet, but this video is only halfway through, right, Stuff? All right, so we're gonna continue on. We're gonna adjust the top of this line and then get it on the QD, make sure that it's adjusted, get the fuel tank back up, and then start running the line all the way to the engine bay, and we'll start showing you guys what it looks like fully installed. So an update, we got it through, but man, we have to take apart a lot of stuff. Step 1. This plastic tunneling, you'll see this piece right here. It's on the side here, right next to the metal line. It goes underneath. You'll have to remove the heat shield. What's this, the ABS? Yeah. Remove the heat shield off the ABS, and there's an access right underneath it. We used a combination of safety wire that I acquired through my military time, and a coat hanger that we sacrificed. We had slid down the coat hanger all the way through. While we were pulling it up, remember this fuel line kind of came all the way assembled. Keep in mind, this will not fit through the tunneling underneath the car. This will kind of bunch up and really suck to pull through. And on top of that, the fitting, just like Stuff said. So we had to remove the fittings. I don't think perhaps maybe Rs Motorsport might have not realized to send these fully assembled. But if you guys are getting this, you'll have to take off the fittings so you could slide the line through. Either this or the quick disconnect side is the same size in terms of the fitting, so it will not fit through the tunneling, especially with the heat shielding. So I'm going to remove the scotch tape and a little zip tie and the safety wire. We're going to slide the heat shielding back on. We're going to put a little lube on these threads here, swedge this line, well, install this line, swedge it, whatever you want to call it, back on. And then we'll continue with assembling the rest of the lines here in the front. But the hardest part's done. Out of 10, I'd say that was a solid 2 in terms of how much it sucked and having to take apart a line. The thing that sucks about taking apart these lines is that it damages the rubber on the inside. So no matter how much lube you put, it eats into the rubber. So removing it, you may remove material on the inside of the line. Luckily, not too much came out. So I feel confident putting some more lube on there, reinstalling it, and should be okay. But I'll keep an eye on this worst case scenario. If I have to replace that small section of line, I will. Now that it's running underneath the car, I feel it'll be a little bit easier replacing it here in the front. But that's it, it's in. It's under. Here, I'll show you guys what it looks like too. All right, so as you'll see, the line is pretty much installed. It's going into the tunnel. Again, this gets really thin towards the beginning and then again towards the middle. So that orange kind of heat shielding and any fitting, essentially that 90 or that quickness won't fit through there. So I'm pretty sure it's just because they build these pretty much on the cars, so they didn't realize it when they fully assembled it and sent it out to me. But I'm going to leave that metal line in place, that little blank line. That's the old feed line. I'm going to leave that in place without trying to rip it out and damage anything in case I ever want to return the car to stock for whatever reason. But the aftermarket line is there. And I've always wondered too, we were looking at it, why they would run lines inside, and then if they were worried about maybe rubbing or any type of, you know, if it would wear down and then eat itself while people were driving. They actually coated that whole tunnel in wax. So the whole line was basically covered in when we pulled it through. So it's actually kind of cool to see and understand that maybe they thought ahead in terms of people driving or maybe longevity. They didn't want anything touching, so they waxed the inside of that tunnel just so nothing would rub or touch or contact. So far, Stav, where do you rate this at?
Oh, it's pretty easy. I mean, not as hard as I thought it'd be.
Yeah, aside from disassembling the lines, everything's pretty straightforward. The only thing that sucked was pulling off, again, this plastic cover. That was the only rough part. It's really, really tight area. We had to take off the turbo inlet to get to it. And it's probably going to be a pain in the butt to put back in. But yeah, it's just small little tedious plastic parts that, you know, Audi in their infinite wisdom said, hey, let's put all this and complicate the install and removal.
Well, it's kind of good because the header's right there, and then you have that as like an insulation.
Correct, correct. So where we're at now, Stav?
Let's continue making these lines. You know.
So I'm going to take off this tape over here.
Yeah.
We're going to clean it up. I'm going to put the fitting back on, lube that up, put it back on, and then I'm going to try to slide. Well, before I put the fitting on, I'm going to try to slide this heat shielding back on, and I kind of marked it where it would stop and start because it goes around the side of the exhaust here. So we'll make sure we have that covered, and then we'll assemble the front end, which it's supposed to be a lot easier than what we had to go through to put the rest. But we're going to continue on here. I hope you guys are following along. If you have to replay this video at any point, please do. If we missed anything or something we could have done easier, put it in the comments below. Let us know. For the next time that we end up doing fuel lines on an RS3, we'll do a little bit better. Anyway, we continue on.
George, so what are you doing here?
So we took off the intake manifold because this is the stock line that goes up to the rail, and then it loops around in a T. So normally it would feed through here from the pump in the tank with the factory line, and then it would feed both the high pressure and go to the rail. Now it's actually going to get split. Where's the Y? So each individual is going to have its own feed. So high pressure port's going to have its own feed, and then the actual rail is going to have its own feed now that we're running a lot larger line, and we went from 8AN to that small tiny line. But right now we got to get to the bottom of this high pressure pump, which sucks because it looks like there's barely any room here. So I don't know how we're going to do it. I don't know where we're going to go, but right here is where we need to get. I don't know if you guys can see it on camera. But that line right, you see that line right there? That one right there is what we need to get to so we can pop it off. Because the feed that Rs MotorSports provided, where's it at? It has these crimp clamps, so we need to crimp it on the high pressure fuel pump in order to fit the tool in there. Where's that tool at, Stuff? It vanished. It's pretty large, so we'll need to get enough leverage and space in there to kind of crimp. So we're gonna have to figure this out. I'm not sure what we're gonna do here, but that's where we're at. Removing the intake manifold, not 80% done, I think. 80, maybe 40, but really, it looks like 80% done. We may have to take off these coolant lines real quick. This one and this one going down. We may need to remove them. How far does it go down? Does this go around to the block?
Ooh,
oh, that's gonna suck.
Look at that IROS logo.
So yeah, we might have to pop off these two coolant lines just to get to that area to properly crimp it. So we'll let you guys know here in a second what we're doing. All right, so we finally got the line off the high pressure pump right there. We had to drop the coolant, remove these tubes. One comes off the block right there with the O-ring, which we're gonna make sure it wasn't damaged upon removal, then re-lubricate it. Disconnect all these coolant lines just to make room so we can do it here off the high pressure. So here is the T that's being eliminated, and then again with the Y, each one's gonna have its own feed, which I'll show you as soon as we put it together. So I'm beginning to think that this is the most pain in the butt rather than the line. The line was somewhat easy. So
I agree.
yeah, Audi, yeah, doing stuff.
Do you mean Audi didn't design this for 1,000 horsepower?
No, man, I don't know what the hell the engineers in Audi were thinking. They should have. They knew people were going to be making 1,000,000 horsepower, bajillion. All right. So we're taking a bit of a break, and we're going to have to cut this video off here. We used the crimps that were included in the kit, but I think they might have been maybe 0.5 or 0.8 too large. These are 15.7s, and so are the ones that are supposed to go on the high pressure fuel pump. But it spins a little too much for my liking in terms of it being okay for me. So I think maybe the wrong ones might have come with the kit, and it even spins a little bit when we had it installed, which I probably should have recorded for you guys, I'm sorry. But when we got it on there and we crimped it, and we crimped the crap out of it, this was just free spinning. So you could take it, free spin it onto the high pressure fuel pump.
You were able to pull it off by hand?
Yes, I pulled it up about halfway through and was able to kind of like really pull it out. And with the high pressure fuel pump, this is gonna be under like 80-90 psi. You know, with all the racing and all the other crazy stuff that we're doing with this car, and probably what's going to come in the future with it. I
mean, the last thing you want is a fuel line to come off. It's a very hot motor.
Yeah.
That, you know, you could potentially. That's how sometimes when ANs come apart, AN lines come apart, you have a fire.
Correct. So we're going to cap this as we're going to turn this into a 2-part series. We actually ordered a kit, so instead of using 15, let's say 0.7s, we're going to use 15.1s or 3s and see if that offers a tighter crimp. So this way I can feel a little bit better about this being on the high pressure fuel pump. So we're going to leave this car as is, torn apart, all over my garage. This car will be down for a little bit.
It's starting to look like your B5, George.
That's cold. That's cold. But yeah, and then we'll replace the 2 crimps that are on here with slightly smaller ones, so we have a tighter crimp. Again, with the high pressure fuel with the high pressure nature of what's going on here with feeding both the high pressure pump and then the rail. I want to feel a little bit more secure. Obviously, I don't want to fire. I don't want anything crazy to happen. So we're going to try to be as careful as possible. Was it okay? I guess a lot of people would have been okay with it. With me, it just moves a little too much. Like even the one on the rail, like I said, you take it and it spins freely. And the one on the high pressure fuel pump just spun a lot more freely than it does on the rail. And I think that's because there's a smaller diameter serrated edge on there. Or barbed edge on there versus what's on the rail, and I think that's the problem. So that's it for this video. I'm gonna cap this off. This is gonna be the end of part 1 on the fueling upgrades on the RS3. Again, like I mentioned earlier, there's surge tank coming for this car. Potentially throwing another pump at it, I'm not sure, but I want to have enough fuel, so if we need to turn it up at a given instant for whatever reason, I'm able to.
A B5 ER6 comes out of the woodwork, with nitrous, it's going out there.
Well, when Rolling Anti-Light came out,
I mean, that was cheating.
So that's it. I'm going to cap this video off, guys. Thanks for watching. I'm sorry there's been a delay in the last 10 days in terms of the videos been going out. Styles been logging the crap out of his car. We got another video coming up with him upgrading the spring, installing the nitrous. Right now he's been working with Nick, his tuner, same tuner that does the stuff for us on the RS3 from Rs Motorsport. Maxing the car out as is without the nitrous, and then as soon as the car is maxed out, throw the bigger springs on the gates, throw the nitrous on there, and then maybe even drive down to Vegas as Rs Motorsport is looking to get a new dyno, and get Stops car on the dyno and see what kind of power it's going to make, I guess.
But we're not going to see full power because Hank says his dyno is limited to 3,000 wheels. So,
So that's what we have planned. So be patient, guys. Thank you guys for the support. Appreciate all the feedback. And that's it. I'm George.
I'm Styles.
Thanks for watching. As always, we'll see you guys in the next video.